Almost nobody realizes that some of the highest protein foods on the planet aren't animals at all. We're told that without meat, you lose muscle and your energy dies. But biologically, your body doesn't care about meat. It only cares about amino acids. And here's what should shock you. Some plants contain more usable protein than the meat in your fridge right now. Modern science is just now proving this, but one ancient text beat them to it by thousands of years. Long before laboratories, the Bible listed these exact plants as elite survival foods and gifts fit for kings. Today, we are uncovering 20 biblical plants that outperform meat, where science finally caught up to Scripture. 1. Lentils, the stew that cost a birthright. In the book of Genesis, a starving man named Esau came in from the field and smelled something cooking, a reddish stew his brother Jacob had made from lentils. He wanted it so badly he traded away his birthright, his entire inheritance, for a single bowl. It sounds like a story about hunger. It's actually a story about biology. Lentils are roughly 25% protein by dry weight, built from amino acids your body uses to repair muscle and produce enzymes. But their real advantage is fiber. Lentils slow digestion so that protein and energy release steadily instead of spiking and crashing. A 2017 study in the British Journal of Nutrition found legume-based meals produced longer-lasting fullness than meat-based meals of equal calories. Here's the twist. Lentils were one of the earliest cultivated crops in human history, older than written language itself. Esau didn't just want food. He wanted the one thing that could actually keep him alive. 2. Fava beans, Daniel's secret diet. Taken into a foreign king's court, the prophet Daniel refused the royal meat and wine. Instead, he asked for something simpler, pulse, an old word for legumes, and water. After 10 days, he and his companions looked healthier than everyone eating from the king's table. Fava beans were among the most common pulses in the ancient Near East. Modern nutrition explains why Daniel's diet worked. Fava beans are rich in L-dopa and complete enough protein, providing nearly all essential amino acids while delivering iron and folate meat often lacks in comparable amounts. Research published in Nutrients found legume-heavy diets associated with improved metabolic markers compared to diets centered on animal protein. The surprising part? Daniel wasn't fasting. He was running a controlled experiment, and the plant-based side one. This wasn't restriction. It was strategy. 3. Barley, the 5 loaves that fed thousands. When a crowd of thousands followed Jesus into the countryside with no food in sight, one boy offered what he had, 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. In first-century Judea, barley wasn't a delicacy. It was the bread of the poor, cheap, abundant, and dismissed by the wealthy. That dismissal was a mistake. Barley contains beta-glucan, a fiber that slows carbohydrate absorption while supporting steady protein delivery to muscle tissue. Whole barley provides roughly 12 grams of protein per cooked cup, more usable protein per calorie than many cuts of meat. A study in the Journal of Nutrition linked regular barley consumption to improve blood sugar control and increase satiety. Here's what's rarely mentioned. The poor man's grain outperforms modern refined wheat in almost every nutritional category. The loaves weren't a miracle of quantity alone. They were already quietly powerful. 4. Wheat, the grain Ruth gleaned to survive. Widowed and foreign in a new land, Ruth walked behind harvesters in Boaz's fields, gathering the grain stalks workers left behind. It was backbreaking, humiliating work, and it kept her and her mother-in-law alive through the wheat harvest. Wheat, in its whole form, carries gluten, a protein complex so concentrated that early cultures learned to isolate it entirely, creating what's now called Seitan, a food that contains roughly 25 grams of protein per 100 grams, rivaling chicken. Researchers studying ancient grain protein extraction found ancient Chinese and Middle Eastern cultures independently discovered gluten isolation methods over 1,000 years ago. The twist? Wheat gluten, not soy, was history's original meat replacement. Ruth gleaned it out of desperation. She had no idea she was gathering one of the densest plant proteins in existence. For stories in, and already a pattern is forming. Legumes, grains, and forgotten proteins the Bible mentioned by name centuries before anyone measured amino acids. But the next one isn't found in a field. It's found on a dead branch that shouldn't have grown anything at all. 5. Almonds, the nut that grew from a dead branch. During a leadership dispute in the wilderness, Moses collected staffs from each tribal leader and left them overnight in the tabernacle. By morning, one staff, Aaron's, hadn't just sprouted. It had budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds, all in a single night. Almonds later inspired the design of the golden lampstand itself, its cups shaped like almond blossoms. Modern science shows almonds contain roughly 21 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with magnesium that directly supports the enzyme reactions muscles need for contraction and repair. A Harvard-affiliated study found daily almond consumption improved markers of muscle recovery comparable to lean protein sources. Here's the surprising fact. Almonds are technically a seed, not a true nut, hidden inside a fruit closely related to the peach. Aaron's staff didn't just prove authority. It grew the single most protein-dense food described in the entire wilderness account. 6. Pistachios, Jacob's gift to a forgotten son. Believing his son Joseph was dead, Jacob sent his remaining sons to Egypt during a famine, instructing them to carry the land's finest gifts to a powerful stranger, among them, pistachios. He had no idea he was sending a gift to Joseph himself. Pistachios were rare then. They're remarkable now. They deliver about 20 grams of protein per 100 grams, alongside all 9 essential amino acids, a rarity among plant foods, which usually fall short on 1 or 2. A study in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry found pistachios uniquely support both protein synthesis and healthy cholesterol balance simultaneously. The twist? Ancient trade records show pistachios traveled thousands of miles along routes normally reserved for gold and spices. Jacob thought he was sending flattery to a stranger. He was sending one of the most complete proteins available in the ancient world. 7. Millet, the bread of exile. Commanded to prepare for a coming siege, the prophet Ezekiel was told to bake bread from a single, unusual recipe: wheat, barley, beans, lentils, and millet, all combined into one loaf, rationed by weight to survive famine. Millet was the ingredient most modern readers overlook entirely. This small ancient grain contains close to 11 grams of protein per cooked cup, along with magnesium and antioxidant compounds that support cellular repair during periods of physical stress. Research from the Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism found millet-based diets associated with improved metabolic resilience compared to refined grain diets. Here's what's easy to miss. This 5-grain survival bread wasn't random. Combined, these ingredients form a nearly complete amino acid profile, something no single grain achieves alone. Ezekiel's famine bread wasn't a punishment recipe. It was, by nutritional accident, engineered for survival. 8. Spelt, the ancient cousin of wheat. Spelt appears in that same Ezekiel recipe, folded into the famine loaf alongside wheat and barley. An ancient grain that predates modern wheat by thousands of years and was once a dietary staple across the ancient Mediterranean. Spelt carries roughly 10 grams of protein per cooked cup, with a more digestible gluten structure than modern hybridized wheat. A study in food chemistry found ancient grains like spelt retained higher mineral density than modern wheat varieties bred primarily for yield rather than nutrition. The surprising twist? Spelt wasn't chosen for Ezekiel's bread by accident. Ancient cultures already understood that combining grains created more complete nutrition than any single crop alone. Modern breeding optimized wheat for size. Ancient cultivation, without knowing it, had optimized spelt for survival. 9. Chickpeas, the food older than Rome. Long before Rome existed, chickpeas were already being harvested across the ancient Fertile Crescent, ground into pastes, roasted as snacks, and traded across empires that rose and fell around them. They remain one of the most efficient plant proteins ever discovered, delivering about 19 grams of protein per cup alongside resistant starch that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found chickpea consumption improved both satiety and blood sugar stability more effectively than white bread of equal calories. Here's the twist. The humble chickpea outlasted the empires that once depended on it. Civilizations fell. This one food just kept feeding the next one. 10. Soybeans, the bean that fed ancient China's armies. By 200 BCE, Chinese armies were carrying fermented soybean rations into battle. Compact, shelf-stable, and dense enough in protein to sustain soldiers marching for weeks without meat. Soybeans deliver around 36 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight, more than most cuts of beef by that same measure, and contain all 9 essential amino acids in near-ideal ratios. Research published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found soy protein comparably effective to animal protein for muscle maintenance in controlled trials. The surprising part? Fermentation, the ancient preservation trick, also unlocks more usable protein than the raw bean alone. An empire's army once marched on this bean. Modern nutrition science just confirmed why it worked. Notice what's happening. Every civilization on this list discovered high-protein plants independently, without knowing what protein even was. If you think that's remarkable, the next one was fuel for runners who covered 90 miles a day. 11. Quinoa, the grain the Incas called mother of all grains. The Inca Empire called it Chia Mama, mother of all grains, and reserved the first planting of each season for a ceremonial blessing by the emperor himself, treating it as sacred before a single seed touched ordinary soil. Quinoa isn't technically a grain at all. It's a seed and one of the only plant foods containing all 9 essential amino acids in a ratio close to eggs. A study in the Journal of Food Science confirmed quinoa's protein quality score rivals that of casein, one of the most complete proteins in dairy. Here's the twist. Spanish colonizers banned quinoa cultivation, correctly recognizing it as a source of Incan strength and resistance. An empire was built partly on this seed. Another empire tried and failed to erase it. 12. Hemp seeds, the seed grown for 10,000 years. Archaeological evidence places hemp cultivation among the oldest agricultural practices on Earth, grown across ancient China, the Middle East, and Europe for fiber, oil, and food, millennia before anyone understood its nutritional profile. Hemp seeds provide about 31 grams of protein per 100 grams, in a form the body absorbs unusually efficiently, along with omega-3 fats rarely found together with plant protein. Research in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirmed hemp protein's amino acid profile closely resembles that of egg whites. The surprising fact? Hemp seeds contain no measurable THC. The compound is confined almost entirely to the plant's flowers, not its seeds. 10,000 years of cultivation, and modern science only recently figured out why it mattered. 13. Chia seeds, the fuel of Aztec runners. Aztec messengers reportedly ran over 100 miles carrying nothing but a pouch of chia seeds and water, a ration light enough to carry, dense enough to sustain days of continuous movement. Chia seeds deliver roughly 17 grams of protein per 100 grams, but their real advantage lies in soluble fiber that forms a gel in water, slowing digestion, so energy releases gradually rather than crashing. A study in nutrition research found chia consumption improved endurance performance markers in trained athletes compared to a placebo. Here's the twist. The word chia derives from an ancient word for strength. Modern endurance science calls it a slow-release carbohydrate strategy. The Aztecs just called it running fuel. 14. Pumpkin seeds, the seed Aztec healers prescribed. Beyond ceremony, Aztec healers prescribed roasted pumpkin seeds specifically for wound recovery and physical exhaustion, a detail modern researchers only recently connected to actual biological function. Pumpkin seeds provide close to 19 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with zinc, a mineral directly required for tissue repair and immune cell production. A study in nutrients found zinc-rich diets significantly improved wound healing speed compared to zinc-deficient diets. The surprising part? Most modern diets fall short on zinc despite it being essential for the exact repair processes people rely on protein for. Ancient healers prescribed a seed for recovery. Science eventually explained the mineral doing the actual work. 15. Sesame seeds, the oldest condiment on Earth. Sesame seeds appear in trade record from Mesopotamia dating back over 4,000 years. Pressed into oil and ground into paste long before olive oil became the Mediterranean staple it is today. Small as they are, sesame seeds contain about 18 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with lignans, plant compounds shown to support hormone balance alongside muscle maintenance. A study in the Journal of Nutrition found sesame supplementation improved markers of antioxidant status and protein utilization in older adults. Here's the twist. Tahini, made almost entirely from ground sesame, contains more protein by weight than most nut butters. The oldest condiment in recorded history might also be one of the most overlooked proteins in your kitchen. 16. Peanuts, the nut that wasn't a nut at all. Long before appearing in American pantries, peanuts were cultivated in South America for thousands of years, later carried by traders into Africa, where entire regions built dietary staples around them centuries before reaching the rest of the world. Despite the name, peanuts are legumes, not tree nuts, and they deliver roughly 25 grams of protein per 100 grams, among the highest of any plant food. Research in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found peanut protein comparably effective to animal protein in supporting lean muscle mass over time. The surprising fact? Peanuts contain resveratrol, the same compound often associated with red wine. A misnamed legume quietly became one of the most protein-dense foods most people eat without realizing it. 17. Sunflower seeds, the seeds sacred to ancient sun worship. Long before sunflowers became garden ornaments, indigenous cultures across the Americas cultivated them as a primary food crop, grinding the seeds into flour and pressing them for oil centuries before European contact. Sunflower seeds provide about 21 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with vitamin E, an antioxidant shown to protect muscle tissue from oxidative stress during physical exertion. A study in free radical biology and medicine found vitamin E supplementation reduced exercise-induced muscle damage markers significantly. The twist? Sunflower seeds contain more protein per calorie than most commercial protein bars. A flower grown to face the sun turned out to be one of history's most efficient protein crops. 18. Black beans, the bean of the Aztec Empire. Black beans formed a dietary cornerstone of Aztec civilization, paired almost always with corn, a combination that, unknown to them, created nutritionally complete protein when eaten together. On their own, black beans deliver about 21 grams of protein per cooked cup, rich in fiber that feeds gut bacteria linked to improved nutrient absorption. A study in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association confirmed that beans paired with grains produce amino acid profiles comparable to animal protein. Here's what's rarely discussed. This bean and corn pairing appears independently across Aztec, Mayan, and later broader Latin American cuisine. The same nutritional solution, discovered separately. Different civilizations, thousands of miles apart, arrive at the exact same protein strategy without ever comparing notes. 19. Nutritional yeast, the microbe that fed soldiers. During the food shortages of the First World War, German researchers experimented with cultivating yeast as an emergency protein source, eventually deploying it as army rations when conventional meat supplies collapsed. Nutritional yeast delivers an astonishing 50 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with naturally occurring B12, a nutrient plant foods almost never contain on their own. Research published in Food Science and Nutrition confirmed nutritional yeast protein digestibility scores rival that of whey. The surprising twist? This wartime survival food is now a mainstream kitchen staple, prized for its cheesy flavor as much as its protein content. A crisis ration born from desperation became one of the most protein-dense foods available today. 20. Spirulina, the algae harvested from an Aztec lake. Spanish chroniclers documented Aztec people harvesting a blue-green algae from the surface of Lake Texcoco, drying it into cakes, and consuming it as a dietary staple centuries before anyone understood what it actually was. That algae was spirulina, and by dry weight, it contains up to 57 grams of protein per 100 grams, more than any land animal, plant, or grain on this entire list. A study in the Journal of Medicinal Food confirmed spirulina's amino acid profile meets nearly all essential human requirements in a single food source. Here's the final twist. NASA has studied spirulina as a potential food source for long-duration space travel. An empire harvested it from a lake centuries ago. Space agencies are now considering it for a very different kind of survival. 20 plants, 5 continents, one pattern connecting all of them. None of these civilizations had access to a nutrition lab. They had observation, noticing which foods kept people strong, which ones sustained runners, soldiers, and prisoners of famine, and which ones simply outlasted everything else on the table. And running quietly beneath more of these stories than most people expect is one ancient text, listing exact combinations of legumes and grains as survival rations, describing a nut that grew overnight, naming a gift more valuable than gold. All of it, centuries before anyone could explain amino acids. Modern science didn't invent the idea that plants could rival meat. It simply measured what had already been observed, tested, and written down. You don't need to replace every meal starting tomorrow. Pick 1 or 2 of these. A scoop of lentils, a handful of pistachios, a spoonful of tahini, and notice how they actually make you feel over the next few weeks. Not because it's a miracle, because consistency is the only ingredient every one of these civilizations, and this ancient text, had in common. Try it. Watch what your body tells you. And if this changed the way you look at the food already sitting in your kitchen, like the video and hit the subscribe button.